Jake Morrison was tired. He had been watching screens for the past 8 hours at Outpost Meridian, a small monitoring station floating in deep space. His shift was almost over. In 15 minutes, someone else would take his place, and he could finally sleep. Then the alarm went off. Jake sat up straight in his chair. The old receiver array, the one that picked up signals from far away, was showing something. He checked the readings twice to make sure. There was a signal coming from coordinates that should not exist. The location was in a part of space that nobody went to anymore. The signal was weak. It kept breaking up. But Jake recognized the pattern. It was an SOS. Someone was in trouble. He hit the emergency button. Within 3 minutes, Commander Emma Valdez walked into the control room. She was the officer in charge of the station. Her face was serious as she listened to the signal. "Can you clean it up?" she asked. Jake worked on his computer, filtering out the noise. Slowly, a message came through. It was from a colony ship called the Harmony's Hope. The ship had been carrying 4,000 people from the Centauri colonies. They were families, workers, children, old people, just regular civilians trying to move to a new home. Something had pulled them off course. The ship had crashed on a planet that was not on any map. The planet was deep in a region called the Silent Reaches. Emma's face went pale when she heard that name. "Play the rest," she said quietly. Jake played the video files that came with the signal. The screens showed frightened people huddled together in emergency shelters. Parents held their children. Everyone looked scared. The voice in the message explained that they had lost 200 people in the first week. Something was hunting them on this planet. Something dangerous. The message was already 3 weeks old. Emma immediately sent the information to Earth Command. She marked it as urgent priority. Then she sat down and waited. Jake stayed with her, even though his shift was over. 2 hours later, Admiral Greg Patterson received the report at Earth Command headquarters. He was an old soldier who had fought in many wars. He had seen terrible things in his long career, but when he read about the 4,000 civilians trapped in the Silent Reaches, his jaw tightened. He knew what the Silent Reaches meant. For 200 years, different groups had tried to explore that region of space. 14 expeditions had gone there. None of them had ever come back. Not one ship, not one person. The Galactic Council, which governed most of the known species in space, had declared it a forbidden zone. Even the Kreth Empire, which loved war and was never afraid of anything, refused to send ships there. But Patterson also knew something else. Those 4,000 people were human. They were his people. And humans did not leave their own behind. He walked to his office window and looked out at Earth below. The planet was peaceful now. Billions of people lived normal lives. They went to work, raised families, and felt safe. They felt safe because people like Patterson made hard decisions. He sat down at his desk and activated Protocol Omega. It was an emergency code that had never been used before. Not in the 300 years since humanity had joined the galactic community. The protocol was simple. It called every military ship, every fleet, every soldier back to base. Maximum combat readiness. Destination classified. Within an hour, every human military commander in space received the same message. Ships that were on patrol near Jupiter turned around. Fleets protecting colony worlds prepared to move. Special operations teams on secret missions got the recall order. The alien ambassadors on Earth noticed the activity. They had offices in the diplomatic quarter, and they had sensors watching human military movements. When they saw every human warship being recalled, they got worried. Ambassador Thelmora of the Vrilnari was the first to figure it out. She was a tall alien with 6 eyes and skin that changed colors. She had been on Earth for 5 years and thought she understood humans. Now she was not so sure. She went to Patterson's office without an appointment. The guards tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. "Where are you sending your fleet?" she demanded. Patterson looked at her calmly. "That's classified information. It's the Silent Reaches, isn't it?" Thelmora's 6 eyes were all wide. "You're going there. Admiral, you cannot do this. Your species does not understand what lives in that place. There are things there older than any of our civilizations. Things that do not follow normal laws. Things that cannot be killed. She walked closer to his desk. 14 expeditions went there. Good ships with brave crews. None came back. The Reaches consumed them all. If you send your fleet there, they will all die. Patterson turned his computer screen so she could see it. The screen showed faces from the distress message. There was a little girl holding her mother's hand. An old man trying to smile, a young couple with a baby. These people sent out a call for help, Patterson said. They're humans. Our people. The galaxy might say they're lost, that we should just forget about them. But that's not who we are. Thelmora looked at the faces on the screen. Her skin turned a dark blue color, which meant she was afraid. You will doom your fleet for 4,000 people? She asked. We'll doom our entire species if necessary. Patterson replied. But we don't abandon our own. Not for anything. Not even for things that cannot be killed. The ambassador left his office. She went straight to the Galactic Council chambers and called an emergency meeting. Within hours, representatives from dozens of alien species gathered to discuss what humanity was planning. The Kreth warlord, Velkresh, listened to the report. He was huge, covered in armor plates that grew from his skin. His species had conquered 30 star systems through pure military might. The humans are fools, he said. But brave fools. I respect that. An elder from the Sophie Union disagreed. They are young and do not understand the dangers of the universe. We should stop them. How? Thelmora asked. They have activated a protocol we did not know existed. Every human warship is being recalled. They are preparing for something big. Back on Earth, Patterson watched as reports came in. The fleet was gathering at Rally Point Exodus, a hidden military base in the Kuiper Belt. He had 72 hours before they would be ready to launch. He spent those hours reviewing everything known about the Silent Reaches. There was not much information. The region had strange properties. Ships reported that their sensors went crazy there. Space itself seemed wrong. Some crews had sent back messages about seeing things that should not exist before their transmissions stopped. But Patterson also reviewed human history. He read about times when humans had faced impossible odds before. When the first settlers on Mars almost died but refused to give up. When colony ships were attacked by unknown aliens, and Earth sent everything they had to save them. Humans had a simple rule. It was not written down anywhere. It was just understood. Captain Dan Harper stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the fleet gather. His ship was called the Vengeance. It was a battle carrier, one of the biggest warships humanity had ever built. It carried 200 fighter craft and enough weapons to destroy a small planet. But the Vengeance was just one ship. Around it, dozens of other battle carriers moved into position. Beyond them were heavy cruisers, destroyers, missile frigates, and support vessels. Harper counted over 300 ships, and more were arriving every hour. This was the largest human fleet ever assembled. And it was gathering in secret, hidden in the Kuiper Belt, where most aliens never came. Captain, we have new arrivals, Lieutenant Amy Chen reported from her station. She was running diagnostics on the weapon systems. Ships are coming in from the outer colonies. Harper looked at his screens. 10 more warships dropped out of hyperspace and joined the formation. These were older vessels, some of them dating back 50 years. But they had answered the call. What really caught Harper's attention were the ships that arrived without any identification codes. They appeared on sensors, but had no names, no official registration. They were painted black and moved with strange grace. Harper had heard rumors about these ships. People called them the Ghost Fleet. Sir, those ships, Amy said quietly. They're not supposed to exist. I know, Harper replied. But I'm glad they're here. The Ghost Fleet represented something humanity had never admitted to the galactic community. When humans joined the Galactic Council 300 years ago, they had signed treaties. These treaties limited what weapons they could build. No planet cracker missiles, no artificial intelligence warfare systems, no quantum disruptors, no reality warping technology. Humanity had signed those treaties with smiles. They had allowed alien inspectors to visit their military bases. They had seemed like obedient members of the galactic community. But humans were good at keeping secrets. The Ghost Fleet ships carried all the forbidden weapons. They were crewed by people who had no official records. They operated from bases that did not exist on any map, and when the Galactic Council inspectors came around, these ships simply vanished into deep space. Amy ran a deep scan on the weapon systems of the Vengeance. What she found made her stop breathing for a moment. "Captain, our ship has them too," she said. "All the forbidden weapons. They're hidden in compartments the inspectors never found." Harper nodded. "Every major warship in the fleet has them. We've been preparing for something like this for a long time." "Preparing for what?" "For the day when we'd have to break the rules to save our people." The gathering continued. Within 72 hours, humanity had assembled 427 warships. Nearly 300,000 men and women crewed these vessels. It was the most dangerous armada ever created by a single species. On other worlds, alien observers watched in growing fear. The Vrelnari had sensors near the Kuiper Belt. They detected the gathering fleet and sent urgent reports to their government. The Kreeth Empire noticed that human warships guarding their shared borders had suddenly left their posts. The Sophie Union intercepted encrypted communications and realized something big was happening. In the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was called. Representatives from 40 different species gathered to discuss the human fleet. "They are preparing for war," one ambassador said. "But against whom?" "They're Vistraback. They are going to the Silent Reaches," Thelmora explained, "to rescue their civilians." The chamber fell silent. Then everyone started talking at once. "That's suicide," someone said. "They'll lose the entire fleet," another added. "We must stop them," a third voice called out. But the Kreeth warlord Velkresh stood up. His massive form dominated the chamber. "Let them go," he growled. "If they are foolish enough to challenge the Reaches, that is their choice. Besides, we cannot stop them. Look at the fleet they have built. If we tried to interfere, they would fight us too." On board the command ship Defiant, Admiral Patterson prepared to address his fleet. The Defiant was the largest dreadnought humanity had ever constructed. It had been built in secret over 15 years. The aliens thought humanity only had 20 dreadnoughts. They were wrong. The Defiant was the 31st, and it had never been reported to the Council. Patterson stood in the communications center. Around him, his senior staff watched. Commander Emma Valdez was there. She had left her monitoring station to join the mission. If humans were going to the Silent Reaches, she wanted to be part of it. "Open a channel to all ships," Patterson ordered. The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. All ships receiving." Patterson took a breath. Then he spoke. "This is Admiral Patterson to all fleet personnel. You all know why we're here. 3 weeks ago, 4,000 civilians sent out a distress call. They crashed in the Silent Reaches. Something on that world is hunting them. They've lost over 2,000 people. They need help." He paused, letting that sink in. "The Galactic Council says those people are lost. They say the Silent Reaches is too dangerous. They say we should mourn and move on. But that's not who we are. Humanity has a simple rule. You touch one of ours, you answer to all of us." Throughout the fleet, crew members listened. In the fighter bays, pilots checked their equipment. In the marine quarters, soldiers cleaned their weapons. In the engine rooms, engineers made final adjustments. "The aliens think we're reckless," Patterson continued. "They think we're too violent, too aggressive. They've tried to tame us with their rules and treaties. They see us as dangerous children who need guidance." Harper smiled as he listened. Every word Patterson said was true. "Today, we show them what humanity really is. We're not children. We're not tame. We're the species that refuses to accept the impossible. We're the people who go into the dark places and bring our own home. The Silent Reaches has taken enough. Today, we take back what's ours." The speech ended. For a moment, there was silence across the fleet. Then, starting on the Vengeance and spreading to every other ship, The crews began to cheer. The sound was not transmitted over the radios, but if it had been, it would have echoed across the solar system. Patterson gave the order. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Navigation. Set course for the silent reaches. We jump in 30 minutes. All. The fleet moved into jump formation. The larger ships formed the center. Faster vessels took the flanks. The Ghost Fleet ships positioned themselves at the front, ready to scout ahead. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. On the Vrelnari homeworld, Ambassador Thelmora watched the live feed from their sensors. She saw the human fleet preparing to jump. Her 6 eyes were filled with sadness. They are going to die, she told her aide. All of them. The Reaches will consume that fleet, like it consumed all the others. But her aide, a younger Vrelnari who had spent time studying humans, shook his head. Maybe, he said. Or maybe we've been wrong about them. Maybe humanity is different. How? Because every other species that went to the Reaches went to explore, to study, to understand. Humanity is going there to fight. They're not explorers walking into a trap. They're warriors, going to war. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace in waves. First went the Ghost Fleet ships, vanishing in flashes of distorted light. Then the main battle groups followed, the heavy carriers, the cruisers, the destroyers. Finally, the Defiant itself made the jump. With Admiral Patterson standing on the bridge, automated monitoring stations throughout the sector recorded the event. The footage would be studied for years afterward. 427 human warships vanishing into faster-than-light travel, heading toward a region that had killed everyone who entered it. In the Galactic Council chambers, the representatives watched the recordings in stunned silence. They had seen many things in their long histories. They had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. They had seen wars that lasted centuries. They had explored mysteries that took generations to solve. But they had never seen anything like this. One of the elder species, the Korath, who had been traveling space for over 10,000 years, spoke in a quiet voice. I have lived through 400 generations, the Korath elder said. I have seen species rise to greatness and fall to dust. I have witnessed wonders and horrors beyond counting. But I have never seen a species do what humanity is doing now. What is that? Someone asked. They are choosing possible extinction over abandoning their people. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the silent reaches. And immediately, everything went wrong. Every sensor on every ship started showing errors. Navigation systems could not get accurate readings. Communication between ships lagged with strange interference. The stars themselves looked wrong. Some flickered with colors that should not exist. Others seemed to pulse with a rhythm that hurt to watch. Commander Paul Rodriguez was the chief science officer on the Defiant. He had 3 PhDs and had studied space anomalies for 20 years. Nothing in his education had prepared him for what his instruments were showing. Admiral, the laws of physics are breaking down here, he reported. Gravity is pulling in directions that don't make sense. Time is moving at different speeds in different locations. Our computers can't make sense of the data. Patterson stood at the center of the bridge, calm despite the chaos around him. Then we navigate without computers. Use visual markers. Plot courses by hand if necessary. Humans explored space long before we had fancy sensors. The fleet pushed deeper into the region. Ships maintained tight formation, staying close enough to see each other with actual eyes rather than relying on sensors alone. It was slow going, but it worked. 6 hours into the journey, they found the first wreckage. Lieutenant Nicole Brennan was leading a squadron of reconnaissance fighters ahead of the main fleet. Her sensors picked up debris floating in space. As she got closer, she recognized the design. It was a Vrelnari exploration vessel. Defiant, this is Recon 7, Nicole reported. I've found one of the lost ships. It's Vrelnari, probably 30 years old based on the design. What's its condition? Patterson asked. Nicole flew closer, shining lights on the wreckage. What she saw made her stomach turn. The hull was not just broken. It was shredded, torn apart by something that left marks like teeth, and the metal itself looked half dissolved, as if something had been eating it. "Sir, the damage is biological," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Something living did this." The fleet continued forward. They found more wreckage, ships from different species, different time periods. All of them showed the same kind of damage. All of them were dead, floating tombs in the darkness. Then the sensors, even damaged as they were, picked up the distress beacon. It was weak but clear. The Harmony's Hope was still broadcasting. "We have a location," the navigation officer announced. "There's a planet ahead. Not on any charts. The beacon is coming from there." Patterson leaned forward in his chair. "All ships, battle stations. Launch all reconnaissance fighters. Let's see what we're dealing with." Nicole led her squadron toward the planet. As they approached, she understood why this world was not on any charts. It looked wrong. The atmosphere swirled with colors that made her eyes hurt. The surface had structures on it. Huge ruins of buildings that must have been made by some ancient civilization. But the architecture was all wrong, with angles that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "I have visual on the colony ship," Nicole reported. The Harmony's Hope had crashed on a flat plain near one of the ancient structures. But the ship was not sitting on the surface. It was half buried, as if the ground had risen up and started consuming it. Parts of the hull were being slowly pulled down into the planet itself. "Defiant, the planet is eating the ship," Nicole said. "It's like the ground is alive." Before anyone could respond, Nicole's warning alarm screamed. Her sensors showed movement all around her squadron. Things were coming up from the planet's atmosphere. They were not ships. They were creatures. Living things that moved through the vacuum of space without any protection. They looked like nightmares given form, writhing masses of shadow and substance, with too many limbs, too many eyes, shapes that hurt to look at because they seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "Break formation," Nicole shouted. "We've got hostiles, multiple hostiles." The creatures attacked with terrifying speed. One of them grabbed a fighter from Nicole's squadron with a tentacle-like appendage. The fighter pilot fired his weapons, but the plasma bolts passed right through the creature as if it was not entirely real. The tentacle tightened, and the fighter crumpled like paper. Nicole heard the pilot's scream cut off suddenly. "Evasive maneuvers," she yelled, throwing her fighter into a hard turn. "These things are alive, and they're hunting us." The main fleet arrived seconds later. Hundreds of warships dropping out of their approach formation and immediately finding themselves under attack. The creatures swarmed up from the planet by the hundreds, maybe thousands. They moved through space like sharks in water, fast and predatory. Captain Harper on the Vengeance watched his screens in disbelief. The creatures were phasing through the ship's shields. Shields designed to stop missiles, energy weapons, even asteroids. But these things just passed through as if the shields were not there. "All weapons, fire at will," Harper ordered. The Vengeance's massive guns opened up. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, railguns. The firepower was enough to destroy a city, but the creatures just kept coming. Some of them were destroyed, blown apart by the concentrated fire. But for every one that died, 2 more took its place. Then the real nightmare began. Marines throughout the fleet started reporting intruders. The creatures were appearing inside the ships, not boarding through airlocks or breaching the hull. Just appearing. They would materialize in corridors, in crew quarters, in engineering sections. And then, they would start killing. Harper saw the security footage. A creature appeared in one of the fighter bays. It had tentacles, claws, and a mouth full of teeth that existed in dimensions the human eye could not properly see. 3 Marines opened fire with rifles. The bullets hit the creature, but seemed to only half affect it. One tentacle lashed out faster than the eye could follow. It went through a Marine's armor like it was paper and killed him instantly. "This is the Vengeance to all ships," Harper broadcast. "The enemy can phase through normal defenses. Switch to quantum weapons." Throughout the fleet, weapons systems that were not supposed to exist powered up. Humanity had not just been hiding these weapons from the aliens. They had been refining them, improving them, preparing them for enemies that could not be fought with normal technology. Quantum disruptors fired from the warships. These weapons created tiny ruptures in space-time itself. Where they hit, reality tore apart. The creatures, which existed partially in other dimensions, could not phase through these attacks. When the quantum weapons hit them, they died. Actually died. Their bodies falling apart at a molecular level. AI warfare systems activated across the fleet. Artificial intelligence was forbidden by galactic law because it was too dangerous. But humanity had built them anyway. These AI systems learned in real time, studying how the creatures moved, how they attacked, how they phased between dimensions. Within minutes, they were coordinating defensive grids that the creatures could not easily penetrate. Marines inside the ships switched to specialized weapons. Reality anchors, devices that stabilized the laws of physics in a localized area. When these anchors were activated, the creatures could not phase. They became solid, real, vulnerable. And then the Marines killed them with extreme efficiency. The battle raged for 3 hours. It was chaos. Ships were damaged. Hull breaches reported on a dozen vessels. The creatures kept coming in waves, trying to overwhelm the fleet through sheer numbers. But humanity had something the creatures did not expect. Humans adapted. They learned. They fought smarter, not just harder. Lieutenant Amy Chen, on the Vengeance, figured out a pattern. The creatures were strongest when they were partially in other dimensions. But when they attacked, they had to become more solid, more real. That was when they were most vulnerable. She programmed the AI systems to recognize that moment, that split second, when a creature solidified to strike. And in that moment, the quantum disruptors would fire with perfect timing. The tide began to turn. The creatures were dying faster than they could swarm. The fleet's defensive grids became more efficient. Marines set up reality anchor fields in key areas of the ships, creating safe zones where the creatures could not phase. Admiral Patterson watched the battle unfold from the Defiant. His ship had taken damage. They had lost people. 17 ships in the fleet had been destroyed. Over 6,000 crew members dead. But the fleet was winning. "Sir, the creatures are retreating," Commander Rodriguez reported. "They're falling back to the planet." Patterson's face was grim. "They learned that we can hurt them. They're not used to prey that fights back." He looked at the planet on his main screen. The Harmony's hope was down there. So were the survivors, if any were left alive. "Launch the Marine dropships," Patterson ordered. "Prepare for ground assault. We're going down there." Captain Harper protested over the communication line. "Admiral, we don't know what else is on that planet. We could be sending our people into a trap. Those civilians have been in that trap for 3 weeks," Patterson replied. "We came here to get them out. So, that's what we're going to do." The fleet moved into orbital position around the planet. Dropships launched from the carriers, hundreds of them, carrying thousands of Marines in powered armor. Fighter craft provided escort, circling around the dropships like protective wolves. As the first dropships entered the atmosphere, the creatures attacked again. But this time, the humans were ready. Orbital bombardment from the fleet cleared the sky. Quantum disruptors fired continuously, creating safe corridors for the dropships to descend. Nicole flew her fighter through the chaos, covering the dropships. She had lost 3 members of her squadron in the first attack. She was not going to lose anyone else. The dropships reached the surface. Marines poured out, establishing defensive perimeters around the Harmony's Hope. They set up reality anchors in a wide circle, creating a zone where the creatures could not easily phase. Lieutenant Kevin Walsh led the first team toward the colony ship. His armor's sensors showed life signs inside. Weak. But there. People were still alive in there. "Breaching the hull," Walsh reported. Going in. As his team entered the ship, they found barricades. Makeshift walls built from debris, furniture, anything the colonists could use. Behind the barricades, people huddled together. They were dirty, injured. The evacuation became a race against death itself. Transport ships descended from the fleet in continuous waves, landing near the Harmony's Hope, loading survivors, and lifting off again. Each trip took precious minutes. and time was something they did not have. Lieutenant Kevin Walsh and his Marines worked through the colony ship section by section. They found survivors in places that seemed impossible to reach. A group of children had hidden in the air filtration system. An elderly couple had barricaded themselves in a storage room. A young mother had kept her baby alive in a cargo hold by rationing the last emergency supplies. Each survivor had the same look in their eyes, horror at what they had experienced, mixed with desperate hope now that the Marines were here. Walsh tried to keep his face calm, professional, but inside, his anger burned. These were innocent people who had done nothing wrong. They had just been trying to travel to a new home. "Keep moving," he told his team. "Check every room. I don't want to leave anyone behind." Above the planet, the fleet maintained orbital bombardment. Captain Harper directed the Vengeance's guns to fire on any large concentration of creatures detected beneath the surface. The planet's ground shook with each impact. Huge craters formed where the quantum disruptors hit, but the creatures kept coming. They surged up from underground tunnels, from the ancient ruins, from places the sensors could not detect. The Marines on the surface fought continuous battles to keep the perimeter secure. Captain Lauren Hayes commanded the transport operations from her ship, the Sanctuary. She had been a logistics officer for 15 years and had organized evacuations before, but never under combat conditions like this. Never with monsters trying to kill everyone. "Transport 12. You're cleared for landing zone 3, she directed. "Transport 15. Hold your position. We have hostiles near your designated zone." One of the transports took fire from a creature that had gotten through the defensive line. The transport's shields flickered but held. Marine fighters swooped in and destroyed the creature with quantum weapons. "Transport crew reports minor damage, but they can still fly," an officer reported to Hayes. "Get them loaded and out of here," Hayes ordered. "How many more civilians do we have?" Latest count shows 200 still in the ship, and another 30 scattered in defensive positions outside. Hayes did quick math. That was 3 more transport runs. Maybe 4. But the sensors were showing massive movement underground. Whatever was down there, it was getting ready for a major attack. On the ground, Walsh finally reached the central habitat module. This was where most of the remaining survivors had gathered. The room was large, designed to be a community space during the voyage. Now it was a fortress. Barricades made from furniture and metal panels blocked every entrance. The survivors had weapons, mostly improvised. Pieces of pipe sharpened into spears, tools turned into clubs. A few had actual guns, though ammunition was almost gone. When Walsh and his team broke through the barricade, the colonists initially raised their weapons. Then they saw the Marine insignia on the armor, and several people collapsed in relief. An older man, his hair gray and his face lined with exhaustion, stepped forward. "I'm Marcus Flynn, Colony Administrator. Are you really here, or am I finally losing my mind?" Walsh opened his helmet visor so the man could see his face. "We're real, sir. We're United Earth Marines, and we're getting you off this planet." Flynn's eyes filled with tears. "There's over 100 people in this room. Children, elderly, wounded. Can you take us all?" "Every single one," Walsh promised. "That's why we came." The Marines began organizing the evacuation. Medical personnel treated the wounded while other Marines carried those who could not walk. Children were gathered into groups, each guarded by armed soldiers. The elderly were helped onto stretchers. One little girl, maybe 6 years old, walked up to Walsh. She was holding a stuffed toy that was dirty and torn. "Are you going to kill the monsters?" she asked. Walsh knelt down to her level. "We're going to do better than that. We're going to make sure they never hurt anyone again." The transports began loading the last of the survivors. But Walsh's sensors were screaming warnings. The underground movement was massive now. Whatever was coming, it was big. "All Marines, prepare for contact," Walsh ordered. Defensive formation around the transports. The ground began to shake. Then it exploded upward as thousands of creatures surged from below. They came in a wave of nightmare flesh, tentacles, teeth, and claws. More than the Marines had seen in all the previous battles combined. "Open fire!" Walsh shouted. The Marines unleashed everything they had. Quantum rifles, reality grenades, plasma weapons. The creatures died in huge numbers. But there were so many of them. For every one killed, 5 more appeared. "Transport crews, get those ships in the air now." Captain Hayes ordered from orbit. "Don't wait for full loads. Get them up here." The transports lifted off with engines screaming. Some were only half full. But there was no more time. Creatures leaped at the rising ships. Marine fighters dove down and destroyed them mid-air. Walsh and his team were the last on the ground. They fought a retreating battle, moving backward step by step toward their own transport. The creatures pressed forward, trying to overwhelm them through sheer mass. "Get on the ship," Walsh yelled to his team. "I'll cover you." His Marines ran for the transport ramp. Walsh stood alone, firing his quantum rifle on full automatic. The weapon overheated, the barrel glowing red. But he kept firing. Creatures fell before him, their bodies disintegrating. But more kept coming. A tentacle lashed out and caught his leg. Walsh felt his armor crack under the pressure. He pulled a reality grenade from his belt and threw it at the creature's mass. The grenade exploded, stabilizing the physics around it. The creature became fully solid, and Walsh's rifle blast tore it apart. Strong hands grabbed Walsh from behind and pulled him up the transport ramp. His second-in-command, Sergeant Rita Lopez, had come back for him. "Sir, with respect, you're not dying down here," she said. The transport lifted off with its ramp still closing. Walsh looked down at the planet's surface. The creatures were everywhere now. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. If the Marines had stayed any longer, they would have been overrun. On the Defiant, Admiral Patterson watched the last transport clear the atmosphere. Final count showed they had recovered 1,847 survivors. Out of 4,000, more than half had died, but over 1,800 were alive because humanity had come for them. Patterson looked at his tactical officer. "Are all our people clear of the surface?" "Yes, sir. All Marines recovered. All transports accounted for." "Good." Patterson's voice was cold now. "Prepare the planet cracker weapons." Authorization code Patterson Alpha 97. The bridge crew froze. Planet cracker weapons were forbidden by every galactic treaty. They were weapons designed for one purpose only: to destroy entire worlds. Humanity had signed agreements promising never to use them. "Sir," Commander Rodriguez said carefully, "the Galactic Council will." "The Galactic Council let 4,000 civilians die here," Patterson interrupted. "They declared this region forbidden and wrote off everyone who ended up here. Well, I'm about to make this region truly forbidden. All." He looked at the planet on his screen. "Those creatures killed over 2,000 humans. They hunted families. They killed children. I'm going to make sure they never do that again." The fleet moved into bombardment formation. Every major warship powered up its most devastating weapons. The planet crackers charged, their cores building up massive amounts of destructive energy. Quantum destabilizers prepared to fire, ready to collapse the dimensional rifts that allowed the creatures to exist. "All weapons charged and ready," the tactical officer reported. Patterson took a breath. What he was about to do would change humanity's relationship with the galactic community forever. The aliens would be terrified. Some would call for sanctions, maybe even military action against humanity. But Patterson did not care. Those civilians deserved justice. And the creatures on that planet needed to learn a lesson that would echo across dimensions. "Fire," he ordered. The fleet opened fire as one. Planet cracker missiles streaked down from orbit, each carrying enough destructive force to shatter a continent. They hit the planet's surface in sequence, drilling deep into the crust. Then they detonated. The planet's surface cracked like an egg. Massive fissures opened, exposing the molten core beneath. The creatures tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Quantum destabilizers fired next, creating ruptures in space-time that collapsed the dimensional spaces where the creatures existed. Reality anchors dropped like bombs, thousands of them, covering the entire planet. They activated simultaneously, creating a field that stabilized physics across the world. The creatures, which relied on dimensional phasing to survive, found themselves trapped in normal reality. And in normal reality, the molten core of a dying planet consumed them. The planet did not just die. It was unmade, reduced to debris and radiation. Where there had been a world, now there was only an expanding field of shattered rock and cosmic fire. Patterson ordered one final action. Automated beacons were deployed around the debris field. Each beacon broadcast a message in every known galactic language. The message was simple. This region claimed human lives. We have rendered judgment. To any species, any entity, any force that threatens humanity. This is the minimum of what we will do. Test us again, and we will bring the kind of war that ends civilizations. The fleet began the journey home. In the medical bays, doctors treated the survivors. In the crew quarters, Marines who had fought on the surface finally allowed themselves to rest. In the command centers, officers began writing reports that would be studied for decades. Captain Harper stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the debris field that had been a planet. Lieutenant Amy Chen stood beside him. The fleet returned to human space as heroes. But the galaxy had changed. News of what humanity had done spread across every civilized world within days. The footage from the battle, the destruction of the planet, the message humanity had broadcast, all of it was shared, analyzed, and debated endlessly. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 3 days after the fleet's return. The chamber was packed with representatives from over 60 species. Everyone wanted to hear what humanity would say about using forbidden weapons and destroying an entire world. Admiral Patterson stood before the council. He wore his full-dress uniform, medals and all. He did not look apologetic. Behind him stood Commander Emma Valdez and several other officers who had participated in the mission. The council speaker, a tall being from the ancient Korath species, addressed him first. Admiral Patterson, you stand accused of violating 17 major treaties. You used weapons that were forbidden. You destroyed a planet. You have committed acts that the Council considers war crimes. Patterson looked at the assembled aliens without flinching. I stand by every action we took. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some aliens demanded punishment. Others called for humanity to be expelled from the Council. A few even suggested military action against Earth. The speaker called for order. When the chamber quieted, he continued. You owe this Council an explanation. Patterson nodded. You're right. Let me explain. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared, showing the colonists from the Harmony's Hope. Families huddled in fear. Children crying, bodies of those who had died. These are the people we went to save, Patterson said. 4,000 civilians. Men, women, children, elderly. They were not soldiers. They were not explorers. They were just people trying to move to a new home. He changed the image to show the creatures they had fought. The aliens in the chamber reacted with visible fear. Some of them recognized those creatures. Every species had lost ships in the silent reaches. These things killed over 2,000 humans, Patterson continued. They hunted families. They killed children. And when we asked for help, when we asked the Council what we should do, you told us to write them off, to mourn and move on. Ambassador Thel Mora of the Vrelnari spoke up. The silent reaches is forbidden for good reason. We told you the danger. We warned you that going there would mean death. You warned us, Patterson agreed. And we went anyway. Because humanity has a rule. We don't abandon our people. Not for anything. He changed the display again, showing the battle footage. The fleet fighting the creatures. Marines dying to protect civilians. Ships being destroyed. You accuse us of using forbidden weapons, Patterson said. You're right. We used planet crackers. We used quantum disruptors. We used AI warfare systems. And you know what? We'd do it again. Because those weapons saved lives. They let us rescue 1,800 people who would have died otherwise. A representative from the Sophie Union stood up. You destroyed an entire world. How can you justify such destruction? Patterson's voice turned cold. That world was already dead. It was a nest for creatures that have been killing travelers for millions of years. Every species here has lost people in the silent reaches. The Vrelnari lost 14 exploration teams. The Kreth Empire lost 5 warships. The Sophie Union lost an entire colony convoy. But nobody did anything about it. You all just declared the region forbidden and moved on. He looked around the chamber. Humanity went there and ended the threat. Permanently. Those creatures will never kill anyone again. You're welcome. The chamber fell silent. Many aliens looked uncomfortable. What Patterson said was true. Every major species had lost people in the silent reaches, and none of them had ever gone back to fight. The Kreth warlord, Velkresh, stood up. His massive armored form dominated the chamber. The human is correct. My empire lost ships in that region. Good warriors. Killed by things we could not fight. Humanity did what none of us were willing to do. They went to war against the darkness itself, and won. He looked at Patterson with something like respect. You have proven that humanity is not just brave. You are dangerous in the ways that matter. You are predators that protect your pack. The Kreth Empire acknowledges this. More voices joined in. Some species supported humanity's actions. Others were still afraid. But the tone of the debate shifted. It was no longer about punishment. It was about what humanity's actions meant for the galaxy. Finally, the council speaker made his decision. This council recognizes that humanity acted to save lives. However, the use of forbidden weapons cannot be overlooked. Humanity will face restrictions, trade limitations, diplomatic sanctions. Patterson smiled slightly. Do what you need to do. But understand this. Those treaties you made us sign, the ones limiting our weapons, we've been breaking them since the day we signed. Every human warship carries forbidden weapons. We have fleets you don't know about, bases in locations you've never found. You thought you were limiting us, but all you did was make us better at keeping secrets. The chamber erupted again. Aliens shouted in anger and fear. But Patterson was not finished. Here's the new reality, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Humanity is not your obedient junior member anymore. We're not children who need guidance. We're the species that goes into the dark places you're afraid of. We're the ones who fight when fighting is necessary. And if that scares you, good, you should be scared. Because we've just shown you what we're capable of when our people are threatened. He turned and walked out of the chamber. His officers followed. Behind them, the aliens argued and debated. But Patterson did not care. He had said what needed to be said. The survivors of the Harmony's Hope were given a hero's welcome on Earth. The government provided them with homes, medical care, and support. They had been through hell, but they had survived. Among the survivors was a young girl named Sophie. She was 8 years old and had lost both her parents to the creatures. At the memorial service for those who died, she asked to speak with Admiral Patterson. Patterson met her in a quiet room away from the crowds. Sophie looked small and fragile, but her eyes were strong. Why did you come for us? She asked. Everyone said we were lost. Why didn't you believe them? Patterson knelt down so he was at her level. Because giving up is easy. Anyone can give up. But fighting when things look impossible, that's what separates survivors from victims. You survived for 3 weeks on that planet. You didn't give up, and we weren't going to give up on you either. Sophie hugged him. Patterson, the tough old admiral who had destroyed a planet and defied the galactic community, felt tears in his eyes. In the months after the rescue, humanity's military expanded dramatically. The pretense of following galactic limits was abandoned. Human warships began patrolling regions that other species avoided. They cleared out pirates, destroyed hostile alien bases, and dealt with dangers that the Council had considered unavoidable facts of galactic life. The silent reaches became humanity's responsibility, not as territory to claim, but as a memorial. The debris field from the destroyed planet was marked as sacred ground. Every human ship that passed by dimmed its lights in honor of those who died there. Other species began requesting human protection. Colonies that were threatened by pirates asked for human warships to patrol their space. Trade convoys hired human escorts. Even the Vrelnari, who had warned against going to the Silent Reaches, asked humanity to help with a dangerous rescue mission in their territory. The galaxy was learning a new lesson. Humanity was not the friendly newcomer anymore. They were the dangerous protectors, the species that other civilizations called when they had problems they could not solve themselves. Captain Dan Harper, now promoted to admiral, commanded the defense of the Silent Reaches region. His ship, the Vengeance, patrolled the area constantly. Lieutenant Amy Chen, now his second in command, helped establish early warning systems that would detect any new threats. One day, as they patrolled near the debris field, Amy asked a question that had been bothering her. "Sir, do you think we've become what the aliens feared? Have we become too violent? Too aggressive?" Harper thought about it. He remembered the battle, the civilians they saved, the Marines who died protecting others, the planet they destroyed. "No," he said finally. "Violence and aggression without purpose, that's what's dangerous. But what we have is directed, controlled. We use force to protect people, to rescue those who can't rescue themselves. That's not being violent. That's being strong enough to do what others can't or won't do." He looked at the debris field on his screens. The galaxy wanted us to be civilized, to follow their rules and be peaceful. But civilization doesn't mean being weak. It means knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. We showed mercy by rescuing those civilians. We showed strength by destroying the things that killed them. On Earth, Admiral Patterson retired from active service. He was 70 years old and had spent 50 of those years in the military. He had earned his rest, but before he left, he gave one final speech to the new generation of officers. "You're inheriting a galaxy that knows what humanity is capable of," he told them. "They know we have weapons they fear. They know we're willing to use those weapons. But more importantly, they know why we use them. We use them to protect our people, all people, not just humans." He looked at the young faces before him. The Silent Reaches taught us something important. It taught us that sometimes being the good guys means being the scary ones. It means being willing to do what others won't. The galaxy needs protectors, and whether they want to admit it or not, they need us. One young officer raised her hand. "Sir, what if they turn against us? What if all the other species unite to stop us?" Patterson smiled. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the creatures in the Silent Reaches learned. You don't threaten humanity and win. You don't attack our people without consequences. And if they're smart, they'll never test that lesson." Years passed. The incident at the Silent Reaches became part of galactic history. Children on human worlds learned about it in school. Other species told stories about it, sometimes with fear, sometimes with admiration. The automated beacons still broadcast their message from the debris field. A warning to anything that might threaten humanity, but also a promise to anyone who needed help. Sophie, the little girl who had survived the planet, grew up to become a diplomat. She worked to bridge the gap between humanity and the other species. She helped them understand that humanity's strength was not something to fear but something to respect. At a conference 20 years after the rescue, she gave a speech that became famous across the galaxy. "My people are dangerous," she said. "We carry weapons that can destroy worlds. We have fleets that can darken the stars. We're aggressive, stubborn, and we never give up. And yes, that should scare you." She paused, looking at the assembled aliens. "But here's what you should understand. We're dangerous to things that hurt the innocent. We're aggressive toward threats that others ignore. We're stubborn about protecting those who can't protect themselves. Humanity is the species that hears a cry for help from the darkest corner of space and says, 'We're coming.'" The speech was met with mixed reactions. Some species applauded. Others remained wary. But nobody could deny the truth of her words. In the present day, the Vengeance continued its patrol of the Silent Reaches. Admiral Harper was older now, his hair gray, but he still commanded with the same confidence he had years ago. A young communications officer approached him with a report. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal. It's from a Soviet Union science vessel. They're in trouble in the Outer Dark region." The Outer Dark was another dangerous area of space. Not as bad as the Silent Reaches had been, but bad enough that most species avoided it. "How far?" Harper asked. 3 days at maximum speed." Harper did not hesitate. "Set course. Maximum speed. Send a message to the Sophie vessel. Tell them, help is on the way." The communications officer smiled. "Yes, sir. Should I inform them who's responding?" Harper smiled back. "Just tell them humanity is coming. That's all they need to know." As the Vengeance turned toward the Outer Dark, its engines burning bright, Admiral Harper looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, people needed help. And humanity would answer that call. They always did. Because that was what humanity had become. Not the violent species the galaxy feared. Not the reckless newcomers who needed guidance. But the protectors. The ones who went into the darkness to bring people home. The SOS that had brought humanity's most dangerous fleet to uncharted stars had taught the galaxy an important lesson. When you called for help, when you were lost and afraid and facing impossible odds, there was one species you could count on. Humanity would come. Through the dark, through the danger, through the impossible, they would come. And heaven help anything that tried to stop them. "Do you think we went too far?" she asked quietly. Harper shook his head. "The galaxy thinks we're too violent, too aggressive. They wanted us to be civilized, peaceful, obedient. Today they learned what happens when you hurt our people. We didn't go too far. We went exactly as far as necessary." In his quarters, Admiral Patterson sat alone. He thought about the 2,000 people who had died before the fleet arrived. About the families torn apart. About the children who would never grow up. Then he thought about the 1,800 survivors who were safe now. About the message humanity had just sent to the universe. The galaxy would be afraid of humanity now. Truly afraid. But sometimes, fear was necessary. Sometimes you had to be the monster to protect your people from the real monsters. Patterson did not regret his decision. He would do it again in a heartbeat. Hosted. Many were wounded. But they were alive. An old man holding a rifle made from spare parts saw the Marines and started to cry. "You came," he whispered. "We knew you would come." Walsh's team spread through the ship, finding survivors in different sections. There were children hiding in storage compartments. Families protecting each other in crew quarters. Engineers who had kept the life support running against all odds. But there were also bodies. Too many bodies. Over 2,000 people had died here. Killed by the creatures, or by the harsh conditions, or by despair. "We need immediate evacuation," Walsh reported to the command ship. "We have survivors, approximately 1,800. Maybe more in sections we haven't reached yet." On the Defiant, Patterson allowed himself a small moment of relief. They had found survivors. The mission was not in vain, but his sensors were also showing something else. The creatures were massing beneath the planet's surface. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. They were preparing for another attack. "All ground units, double time the evacuation," Patterson ordered. "We don't have much time. They are betting their entire military might on a rescue mission. They are going to a place that kills everything. And they're going there angry." Velkresh, the Kreth warlord, made a sound that might have been laughter. "The galaxy is about to learn something important. Humanity is not the friendly species we thought. They are predators who learn to smile. And now they've stopped smiling." The human fleet traveled through hyperspace toward the Silent Reaches. In the crew quarters, soldiers prepared for battle. In the medical bays, doctors readied supplies for casualties. In the command centers, officers studied what little data existed about their destination. Everyone knew this might be a one-way trip. But nobody complained. Nobody suggested turning back. Because those 4,000 civilians, Those families who were being hunted on an unknown world, they were human. And humans protected their own. The fleet would arrive at the silent reaches in 6 hours. Whatever waited there, whatever horror had consumed 14 previous expeditions, it was about to face something it had never encountered before. An angry, unified humanity coming to take back its people. Ood. If you hurt one human, you faced all of humanity. If you threatened human lives, humanity would bring a response that made you regret it. The silent reaches had killed humans before. Small exploration teams that went there decades ago. But now it had 4,000 civilians. Men, women, children, people who just wanted to go home. Patterson made his final decision. He would lead the fleet himself. He would take humanity's most powerful ships, its best weapons, and its bravest people. They would go into the silent reaches, and they would bring those civilians home. Or they would all die trying. He looked at the countdown timer on his screen. 68 hours until launch. He picked up his communicator and sent a message to every ship captain, every Marine, every pilot who would be joining the mission. The message was short. We leave no one behind. Prepare for war.